Coming up on Network Africa, Ghana's foreign ministry reveals at least 55 Ghanaians killed during fighting in the war in Ukraine. In Kenya, a man nabbed for luring young men to fight for Russia is charged to court. Plus, a United Nations plane lands at Khartoum airport for the first time since the war began in 2023, signaling aid relief for citizens. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers. At least 55 Ghanaians have been killed fighting in the Russia-Ukraine war, with 2 others currently being held as prisoners of war. This is according to Ghana's Foreign Affairs Minister Samuel Albakwa, who was speaking during an official visit to Kiev. The minister said Ukrainian authorities estimate that about 272 Ghanaians have been lured into the conflict since 2022, describing the casualty figures as both depressing and frightening. Although it remains unclear which side the Ghanaians are fighting on, Ukrainian officials say more than 1,700 individuals from 36 African countries have been recruited to fight for Russia since the war began. The confirmed deaths represent the highest officially recorded casualties from any single African country in the conflict so far, raising fresh concerns in Accra over recruitment networks targeting young Africans with false promises. Local media in Cameroon have reported that 94 of its nationals have died in the conflict, but the authorities have not commented on these figures. 2 South Africans and at least 1 Kenyan have also died in the conflict. In the meantime, police in Kenya have charged a man accused of luring young men to Russia with job opportunities only for them to end up fighting in Ukraine. State prosecutors say Festus Arasa Owamba, head of recruitment agency Global Faces Human Resources, recruited 22 Kenyans for the purpose of exploitation by means of deception. The victims were rescued last September from an apartment complex in Athi River, a town near the capital Nairobi, before they could travel to Russia. However, 3 others had already left Kenya, finding themselves on the front line of the war and returning home with injuries. 33-year-old Onwamba has pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. A total of 1,000 Kenyans have been recruited to fight for Russia in its 4-year war against Ukraine, according to a report from Kenya's National Intelligence Service released last week. Russia's embassy in Kenya has denied accusations that it was involved in recruiting people to fight in the war. Let's get more on this. Joining us now is Blessed Soga, head of International and African Affairs at the Joy News TV in Accra, Ghana. A pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you.
So with Ghana confirming at least 55 citizens killed, the highest figure from any African country, and reports that Cameroonian, South African, Kenyan, even Nigerian nationals have also died fighting in the Ukraine war. How are regular Ghanaians reacting to this broader African tragedy? What's been social media been saying about this?
Well, it's rather been a silent kind of crisis brewing across the continent because, as you would expect, what's happening in Ukraine and Russia appears to be really far away from the continent. So many people here in Accra are not necessarily ingrained in the day-to-day updates on the war, except to say that this very visit by the foreign minister is now giving us a sense of Ghanaian involvement, not necessarily at state level, but by individuals who are now being lured to fight for either sides of this war. It's the reason for which many were shocked about the numbers. Generally speaking, the foreign minister, after his visit to Kiev, is now giving us a sense that across the continent there seems to be quite a significant surge in the number of individuals who are now being lured into this war. A little under 1,800 individuals, we understand, generally from across Africa, are now being lured to fight in either Russia or Ukraine, depending on the side you're looking at it from. But what's striking is the Ghanaian figures, that on the average, if you're looking at 36 countries into 1,708 or 80 plus, you're looking on the average 49 for each country. But Ghana alone has a situation where there are over 270 individuals who have now been confirmed, according to the official reports that the foreign ministry is putting out, of having participated in this ongoing war. The shocking part is that over 50 individuals confirmed to be Ghanaians now have lost their lives. 55 is the actual number, according to the foreign ministry. They've lost their lives in this war. And so it's now, an eye-opener for many Ghanaians who may have thought that this is a far-fetched conflict, a conflict that has nothing absolutely to do with Africa. But now it's coming home that many more Ghanaians are being a part of this war. And even as we speak, the minister in his visit there has put out pictures of two individuals, identities withheld for security reasons, who we understand are in captivity or under arrest by Ukrainian authorities, obviously because they've been captured as prisoners of war.
Right, and there are reports that many Africans, many of these victims, including Ghanaians, Kenyans, South Africans, and possibly Cameroonians, were lured with promises of lucrative job offers before being sent to the front lines. What similarities have you heard in these recruitment stories and the suggestions about how widespread these schemes really are?
I think the common denominator would be the issue about economic opportunities, because obviously that's what many of these individuals will be on the lookout for. You look at the themes spreading across the 1,000 plus individuals who are being lured to fight for either side of the war, whether it's on the Russian side or the Ukrainian side. There seems to be that advantage that many of these parties in the war are taking advantage of, which is the fact that they seem to be paying a bit more higher than the regular armed institutions that you'd have in this country. And so many of these individuals who are now being lured into it would largely fall for the economic opportunities, relatively better pay that will abound for them if they get to fight in the war, except to say that the downside is that we're losing some of them on our side, on the Ghanaian side. It's quite unfortunate that over 50 individuals have lost their lives, 2 more now in Ukrainian custody. And I'm just wondering, how much of a work it will take for the foreign ministry now to try and negotiate and to get these 2 individuals out.
And given these escalating casualties, including, those countries that we've just mentioned earlier, what specific steps is the Ghanaian government taking to locate, help, or bring home citizens still on the front lines or detained as prisoners of war? Is there anything the foreign minister has said that that we have not heard about yet?
The confirmation the foreign minister is giving now is that per the engagement with these 2 individuals, they have now vowed to be advocates against this whole, syndicate capturing individuals or luring them from Africa to join either sides of the war. And the indication we're getting is that they would want now to speak to the Ghanaian public and to give them some sense of understanding that, look, it's not as it seems. Yes, it looks greener on the other side, but this is a war and Ghanaians should not be involved. So there's a clear condemnation coming through from the side of the foreign minister and also by extension using these 2 individuals, if they do come out from Ukrainian custody, that they would be advocates against what's happening on the continent. Beyond that, there's some goodwill because generally speaking, from the interaction that we've seen between President Vladimir Zelensky and our foreign minister Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the indication clearly is that President Zelensky is happy about Ghana for the fact that, of course, they've enjoyed sweet bilateral, conversations and relations over the period. In fact, Ghana is a non-aligned country, so that gives us a leeway into getting into the Ukrainian authorities and trying to secure some deal for these 2 individuals to be released. And also, we're learning from President Zelensky that he would want to work a bit more with the Ghanaian side, because from next year, there's a unanimous endorsement by West African countries that Ghana's President John Mahama would be obviously the African Union chair. He's already serving as the first vice after the just ended AU summit, which wrapped up in Addis, where the election actually took place. So the expectation is that going forward, President Zelensky might want to leverage on this opportunity and to push a bit more to get the Ukrainian story out on the African continent in terms of getting the continent to appreciate the dynamics of this war a bit more. So it might be a walk in the park now, knowing that, of course, already they've given access to our foreign minister to coming to Ukraine, and not just coming to Ukraine, but also have a word with Ghanaian nationals who are already engaged in this war. Probably what the Ukrainian authorities might also want to do is to balance the scale, because just last week we all had that news of the Russian authorities releasing South African nationals who were part of the conflict, who were fighting on the side of the Ukrainians. So it might be a good optics for the Ukrainian authorities if they do release these two individuals who are Ghanaian and looking forward into the future to work more with President Mahama when he becomes the AU chair.
And, the charge to African leaders, constantly is for them to look inwards and solve their own problems across the continent, really. And that's what ECOWAS tries to do. That's what the AU tries to come together and talk about. But it seems that the youths that are going to lead Africa tomorrow are still rather vulnerable. So how does this speak to the vulnerability of the young people in Africa falling for these recruitment tricks and eventually ending up endangering themselves?
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's a youth bulge in Africa. And in fact, the projections are that 3 out of 4 in terms of the world's labor by 2050 will be in Africa. So there's no doubt that there's a significant manpower on the continent, except to say that many African governments have been you don't want to use the word clueless, but just on a lighter note, about what to do with the significant human resource that we have across Africa. It's time for many African governments for them to move into action, collaborate more, take advantage of some of the levers of the economy, largely informal though, but of course through the frameworks such as the African Continental Free Trade Area, which Ghana is hosting. The belief is that we'll tear down the borders and create more trade opportunities for people to move to and through the continent. That way, of course, intra-African trade will be boosted beyond 15% to allow more young people create SMEs, create jobs, and to trade across the continent. Without that, there's clearly a challenge for many African leaders who would have their youth coming to their doorsteps asking for jobs, and if they don't find them, the alternative will be scary. The fact that we may have, just in this case, have as many as 270 plus individuals who are Ghanaians fighting in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Something very regrettable, and of course we just hope that in the coming days the Ghanaian authorities will be able to secure the freedom of this.
Right. Blessed. Thanks again.
Thanks for having me.
And still to come on the program. Celebrating the male child, Lagos State encourages boys to imbibe discipline in their lives. Do stay with us.
Modern lifestyle requires a lot of energy, backed up by intense production processes, which impact the environment in more ways than one.
The world has realized that you cannot deal with climate change without looking at loss of biodiversity.
On Echo Africa, nature speaks and the discerning mind becomes champion of sustainable living.
One thing we want to do is to change public behavior around recycling.
Watch Echo Africa on Channel Television and find out what nature is saying.
Welcome back. Sierra Leonean security personnel abducted by the Ghanaian army on Monday this week have been released following diplomatic talks led by Sierra Leone's Foreign Affairs Minister Timothy Kaba. According to the government's information ministry, all 16 personnel are safely in the hands of Minister Kaba. Mr. Kaba led a high-level delegation to Conakry, where both governments officials intensely engaged in finding a solution to the border disputes which have seemingly escalated in recent months. Meanwhile, a member of parliament from Kisi Teng Chiefdom in Kailahun district has expressed concern over what he describes as an imminent threat from the side of the Ghanaians after a group of heavily armed personnel of the Ghanaian army this week also made an unauthorized entry into Sokoma village. And police in Cape Town are investigating a fatal shooting at a secondary school that has left a 14-year-old pupil and a taxi operator dead in violence linked to South Africa's long-running taxi industry turf wars. Authorities say an unidentified gunman opened fire on a minibus taxi as the driver waited to pick up pupils, killing the driver and a teenage girl while injuring two other students aged 14 and 16. Officials believe the attack is connected to ongoing disputes between rival taxi associations, conflicts that have plagued the country's transport sector for decades. Western Cape authorities have condemned the incident, warning that escalating industry tensions must not continue to endanger school children. The United Nations says the Central African Republic has reached a crucial milestone in its fragile peace process following the conduct of nationwide elections described as historic. Briefing the UN Security Council, the head of the UN Stabilization Mission, MINUSCA, said the combined presidential, legislative, regional and municipal polls were the most extensive ever held in the country, including the first municipal elections in nearly 4 decades. While the UN welcomed progress in political participation and women's representation, it warned that security threats persist with armed militia attacks, preventing several voting centers from opening.
December 2025, the Central African Republic reached an important milestone in the consolidation of the peace process and state authority by holding combined presidential, legislative, regional, and municipal elections. These elections, which included the first municipal polls, which were held since 1988, represented the most extensive electoral operations ever undertaken in the Central African Republic. This positive outcome is also the result of joint sustained investment over the past years by the Central African government and MINUSCA to extend state authority and advance the implementation on the 2019 political agreement, including at the local level. The mission conducted good offices and provided both technical, logistical, operational, and security support. The good offices of the mission helped foster inclusivity in the electoral process, including positive developments for parity, with women representing more than 47% of the voters and 45% of the candidates in the municipal elections. Ongoing attacks by AAKG militia targeting civilians and local authorities remain a concern. In this context, 21 voting centers in the Ombumu prefecture, out of 6,700 established nationwide, could not open on election day.
In the meantime, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights has delivered a stark warning over Sudan's deepening crisis, describing the country as being on the brink of total despair after nearly 3 years of brutal conflict. Briefing the Human Rights Council in Geneva, he said violence against civilians, including killings, rape and torture, has intensified, with both the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces accused of grave violations of international law. In the meantime, 7 irregular migrants from sub-Saharan Africa have been found dead on the beach east of Libya's capital, Tripoli. The Libyan Red Crescent says the bodies, including 3 children, were recovered from the coastal town of Qasr al-Akia, with fears that more victims may yet be discovered. Libya remains a major transit route for migrants attempting the dangerous Mediterranean crossing to Europe. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 2,100 migrants died or went missing in the Mediterranean last year alone, underscoring the continuing human cost of irregular migration. Let's get back to the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, who has delivered a stark warning over Sudan's deepening crisis, describing the country as being on the brink of total despair after nearly 3 years of brutal conflict. A briefing Human Rights Council in Geneva, Volker Turk said violence against civilians, including killings, rape and torture, has intensified.
Years of brutal conflict have almost turned Sudan into a land of despair. The report I'm presenting today is yet another chapter in the chronicle of cruelty. It outlines clear, ongoing patterns of violence against civilians, including killings, rape, and torture. As the fighting has intensified, violations of international law by all parties to the conflict have surged, while accountability has remained practically absent. Both the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese armed forces have continued to use explosive weapons in densely populated areas, often without warning, showing utter disregard for human life. The parties attacked schools, hospitals, markets, and religious sites in flagrant violation of international humanitarian law. The increased use of advanced long-range drones has expanded harm to civilians in areas far from the front lines that were previously peaceful. The parties, predominantly the RSF, repeatedly used drones to strike critical infrastructure, including power stations, dams, and fuel storage tanks.
And here in Nigeria, wife of the Lagos State Governor in the southwest, Dr. Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, has charged the boy children to imbibe discipline and consider careers in the military and other security service. She gave the charge during an exposition tour for 600 boys drawn from secondary schools across the state. The 2026 Boy Child Initiative kicks off in Lagos House Alausa Ikeja with medical screening of select secondary school boys for this year's program. Medical officers, including the wife of the governor, Dr. Ibijoke Sanwo-Olu, carry out health checkup for the students to know their status before setting out for the day's activities. After the screening, Dr. Sanwo-Olu gives a breakdown of the 4-day residential workshop, which is centered around security.
Our beliefs is that our boys should be identified as responsible boys and not boys that are associated with Yahoo. Boys' feelings should be respected too, and boys should not just be told that boys don't cry, boys bear pain. They are human beings, they have feelings too.
Then the boys move into the buses for the excursion. The first stop is the Nigerian Air Force Base Ikeja, where they are received by senior officers of the Air Force.
We have come here on this excursion with 600 boys. That is like a school. The rest of us are outside, just like tip of the iceberg that is here. This is the 4th time that we are having this program. The first time we had it was in...
They all have their own peculiar needs, and they should be given the necessary mentorship and ideas. We have a lot of of adults that are dysfunctional these days because they didn't have somebody to mentor them, somebody to guide them. It's only when they go wrong we want to use the arm of the law. We want to send them to prison. We want to punish them. But by that stage, it's already too late. If we had corrected them earlier, a little bit earlier, they would have been on the right path. So we want to commend this program and pray that the next time we are meeting these young men, they will be on their way to achieving their dreams.
It's an opportunity for the boys to visit the Nigerian Air Force Aircraft Maintenance Wing to have an experience of how things operate at the depot as well as the runway. At the State Services Academy in Ojo, which is the academic branch of the Department of State Services, the students are engaged on good morals.
Say something when you see something. In case you are in your school and you begin to notice illegal activity of some adults around your school, please don't keep quiet. Make sure you call the attention of a trusted school authority to what you observe. Even in your home.
We may not really have a dream when we were like you. And we don't want that to happen to you. We want you to have a very good dream, a very tall ambition of becoming somebody in the society.
These boys, when we catch them young, they can be responsible men in future. They can end up being like the DG, the commandants in the SSS. They can end up becoming governors, like the commandant told us while we were in the library. One boy just came to me and said, "Madam, I'm actually telling you, I want to become the governor."
Please, a round of applause for her, please.
With this level of exposure given to the boys, alongside proper parental guidance, the state government believes that they will choose the right path and grow to become successful and responsible individuals in life. And that's Network Africa. Thank you for watching. I'm Joke Rogers.